We have that reading from Proverbs 1 through 7, before calling upon our brother Adam to speak to us on the subject, why? It's a question.
Good morning. Good morning. Got double duty again, which, it's always a lot to do. But why do I have it? Is there a simple question? Is it a simple question with a simple answer, or is it a multi-leveled question with lots of different protruding answers? That's what we'll get to. But the answer really is, I was scheduled to speak, and Nathan is a little bit under the weather. So that's why I'm kind of doing both. There. But I have been recently fascinated with the question of why. And particularly, why do people do what they do? A lot of thinking of, okay, and a lot of it kind of goes back to I have a degree in marketing. And we try, and with marketing, you want to know, why do people do what they do? So that way I can convince them to do what I want them to do and get them to buy my products, my stuff. And it all goes back to that question of why. And along with that, like we think about at work. So I'm kind of in my work right now. I feel like I talk about work a lot when I'm up here. But one of the things we do is we're problem solvers, kind of. So if there is an issue out in production, then they will call my department and say, all right, here's a problem, fix it. And with that, it comes the question of, why is there a problem in the first place? Sometimes, work with natural ingredients, and we find that the finished mix, it is very sticky and like sticking to the machine. And you wonder, okay, so why is it so sticky? That's our determination. And normally there is a direct cause. The overall product is sticky because there wasn't enough of one ingredient added. Okay, so we know what the issue is, we know why it is, and now we know how to resolve it. We add more of that ingredient back to it. Or we actually just had one recently where, there was a product that was stuck in an oven for 5 days when it was only supposed to be there for 2 days. And because of that, it didn't taste very good. So the problem was, okay, why was it stuck in there for 2 days or for 5 days? Simple one, because someone forgot to take it out of the oven. And it's these questions of why, because in order to have a solution to resolve the type of conflict, you need to know the reason why. And a lot of that has to do with kind of our motive and what we're doing with things. So why do we do the things that we do versus why should we do the things that we do? It's a question to kind of keep in the back of your mind. And throughout this whole exhortation, I'm going to have lots of questions, maybe not too many answers, but I want you to think about these questions and really think and delve into them, especially on your own. Think about, like right now, why? Just why? When we want to know why, are we focused really on the process itself, or are we focused so much on the end goal? And the situation for myself often, led back to baptism, because there's the question of, do we get baptized to get into the kingdom? And is that the only reason? Or should we be baptized to continue to grow a commitment towards God? We all know what it should be, but think about individually. And it's something which I've kind of struggled with. Even when I chose to get baptized, I thought I was committing to that relationship. But there's always that, little voice in the back of my head saying, all right, I've done this, kind of like check it off. Is that why we're doing these things? Why choosing to get baptized or other life-changing voices, life-changing decisions? Doing it to check off a list? All right, check this off, one step closer to the kingdom. Is that why we're doing it? And the Bible does actually have good reasons for why we should be doing what we do. Not necessarily why we do what we do, but why we should. So I want to turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Talking about the overall purpose of why. especially in regards to motive. Why should we be doing what we do? So that's 1 Thessalonians 2, verses 3 and 4. And this is Paul speaking. For the appeal we make does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you. On the contrary, we speak as those approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel. We are not trying to please people, but God, who tests our hearts. So there is a good reason, straight from the Bible, of why we should be doing what we do. Not for ourselves, not for the people around us, but to please God. And that is a really powerful takeaway already. The exact application, it will depend on, pleasing God versus yourself, because it's going to differ for everyone. But it all starts with this mindset of, are we listening to the people around us? Are they influencing us? The idea of peer pressure, suggesting to us to do what we want to do. Or are we doing it for the greater good, for God? And, another verse, I'm not going to read it, but that kind of strengthens this point. It's in Philippians 1, 15 through 18, just as a reference for those of you taking notes or watching online at some point. So again, it's that point of doing what we do for God and not for man. Okay, sounds pretty simple enough. We've got our motive now. We've got the motive that we should be doing. Again, a lot of should versus what is actual. Then becomes the questions of why. And in my Sunday school class, for those of you that are there, I often start with a question at the very end. The question is, does anyone have any questions? And contrary to popular belief, it's not because I don't have anything planned, and it's also a little strange because I myself hate asking questions, because it's a fear of, I don't look that smart, especially if I'm in like a school setting or a work setting. I'm asking a question which I think is very tricky, but someone else thinks that's very easy. I can get judged for that. And even though that's not what should happen, that is what goes through my mind. So even with that, I still like to ponder the question to students in my class: what questions do you have? There's a couple of reasons for that, but the biggest one is that if someone asks a question, they're going to be more involved in knowing the answer, rather than if I teach them something which they don't necessarily care about. Sure, they may retain a little bit, but if they're asking the question, they are more likely to actually listen. And if they're able to listen, they are able to ask more questions, follow-up questions. And then those follow-up questions they can question me as a teacher, as someone that, is what I'm teaching actually right? Does this make sense? And because in Sunday school we have such a wide background of people, some have grown up with, the truth their whole life, some have just kind of started, and everywhere in between, it's good to know what these questions that they have, so then we can better facilitate to them. But it all starts with that why question, wanting to know more. You think about, with kids and, like nieces and nephews, and, if you say, you can't do this, and then what does the kid say? Why? Why can't I do this? And sometimes the parent says, because I told you so. And sometimes they, start giving out like a long, in-depth answer, and the kid's like, okay, sure, but why? And then just keeps going to that why question. Wanting to know more. And in the Bible, and related to the Bible, there's a lot of big questions, a lot of big why questions. There's some smaller ones too, but these are just a couple of examples of big questions which asking yourself, and what I would consider kind of a big important question is something with like a direct implication on our faith and our actions. versus a smaller, maybe less important why question would be, it's a question that would be okay if left unanswered, or if it's unimportant or just has an easy answer. Doesn't mean that it's not truly unimportant, because it still has meaning. These are some questions that I want you to think about for yourself. And with each question that I asked, think about the answer, and then think about why this is the answer. Is it the answer because that's what someone said, told you long ago, and you just accepted it? Or is it the answer because you have done your research, you fully believe it, you've shared that with others? Maybe questions such as, why should we believe in the Bible? Why should we believe that Jesus is returning? Why does God allow bad things to happen? Why did Jesus have to die? Why did Adam sin in the Garden of Eden? Why do we take the bread and wine every week? You might think some of these questions, that you may have the answer. Especially, why should we believe in the Bible, where we've got, historical records of it? That's what someone else said, right? With history, someone else is doing the research. Are we just accepting that? Do we believe all this because that's what people are telling us, and we just accept it? Think about, why did Adam sin in the Garden of Eden, leading to the downfall of man? Such a possibly, it's a question that hopefully all of us have asked in our lives. But thinking about sin, with bad things, why did God allow for that choice to happen? And why did Adam accept that choice, leading to the downfall of humanity? There's a lot of different ways to go about it, to knowing that why. Reading the Bible, reading what other people have to say, listening to others, talking to other people, learning what they have to learn, learning what they have to teach. But to really think about what's going on and to ask questions. If we're unsure at all, we have a very strong support system here at this church. And we also have a very, we're lucky to be in the new age of technology, where there is a lot of good information out on the internet, bad information too, but being able to know how to filter between what's good, what's bad, knowing which is which, and then being able to use both sides to help defend your faith. So those may be some of the harder hitting why questions, but even some of these little ones which, are okay if left unanswered or have an easy answer. Think about, why do we celebrate December 25th as Jesus' birthday? It's a day. Is it really important to knowing our faith? Maybe, maybe not. Think about our church in particular. Why do we have memorial service before Sunday school? For some of us, we kind of know that there, was a reason back, so that way if people wanted to attend church, they would still be able to partake in the emblems. But that doesn't happen for every church. Think about, days of learning about Joseph. Think about, why did Joseph's brothers throw him into the well? Does this, is it because he had a big, fancy, really colorful coat? Yeah. Is there something more to it? Possibly. Think about Rahab, and why was Rahab saved from the Battle of Jericho? Was it because she helped the spies? Yeah. Is that it? It's these simple questions that we think have an easy answer. X comes from Y. And it's a direct correlation. But there's so many things, when we're talking about people, there's so many different aspects that we can't truly understand why. Think about, why did Jesus weep? In the previous verse, it gives the direct explanation for why Jesus wept, because Lazarus died. But is knowing why Jesus wept and Jesus weeping, does that have important implications? Knowing that Jesus was human, that he had emotions and feelings just like the rest of us? these simple or quote unquote simple why questions can lead to a more thorough explanation of the Bible, because they're important for building our faith as well as the faith of those around us, where we can dig for deeper answers. And I kind of say that ironically because I mean, back in high school and English class, when you're reading a book, the teacher will always, say, all right, what's the hidden meaning? What's the hidden meaning? And I really hated that. Sometimes the sky is just blue. Like, you just have to think about it. Maybe the author just likes a certain color. Not everything means anything. But when you go into it with that type of critical mindset of thinking about it, especially the reasoning why. This Bible has got 66 books in it. It's got a lot of chapters, a lot of verses, and a lot necessarily doesn't seem too important to us just because there's so much in here. And so we can ask the question, why is, whatever passage in this Bible, and should we listen to it? And that question, it does have an answer. Answers from the Bible in 2 Timothy 3, verses 16 and 17. It's one of my favorite verses, talking about why is this here? Why should we pay attention to what's in the Bible? It's 2 Timothy 3, verses 16 and 17. All scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. Pretty powerful verses talking about why what's in the Bible is here. It's for our understanding, for teaching and training, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that we can be better equipped to be servants of God. Again, asking that question of why. And it doesn't matter where you think that you are right now. We can always learn more. We can always continue asking the question of why. One of the most pertinent examples, I thought, was with Nicodemus back in John. Actually, turn a little bit to it. Let's read the latter part of the confrontation between Nicodemus and Jesus in John 3, from verses 9 through 11. So that's John 3, verses 9 through 11. And this is right after Jesus had answered the first of Nicodemus' answer. How can this be? Nicodemus asked. You are Israel's teacher, said Jesus, and do you not understand these things? Very truly I tell you, we speak of what we know, we testify to what we have seen, but still you people do not accept our testimony. So just a little bit kind of in this overall story between Jesus and Nicodemus. And Nicodemus is a high-ranking Pharisee, the ruler of the Jewish council. Very important man with a lot of knowledge. And doesn't necessarily say why, but he asks how. He's asking the question, wanting to know more, despite his position of a ruler of authority. Wanting to continue to learn. And that's something for all of us that we can take away. No matter, if we're 2 years old, if we're 90 years old, there's always something more to learn. And that kind of brings us to the question of, why are you here today? Why are you here today? I want you to think about that question, because that answer is going to differ depending on each person. Is the reason why Mickey is here today, is that different than the reason that Kaya is here? Very separate range, Is that reason different? Or is the reason why Abby is here different from the reason that Charles is here? Again, that answer, it's going to depend on each person. Maybe it's, parents are here and parents are making you come here. Maybe it's you want to learn. Maybe it's you enjoy the fellowship of those people around you. Maybe it's, hoping that there's some food in the back, or maybe it's you're assigned to play the piano, assigned to speak, and so you have a responsibility to attend for. Or maybe you want to continue to build your faith in God. Those are some answers. I want you to think about that for yourself. For why are you here today? Are we here because we want to be here? Or are we here because we know that we should be here? That it's good for us to be here, even if we don't want to. Because even that little mindset, thinking, oh, it's Sunday, let's go to church. Or it's mindset of, it's Sunday, let's go to church. Be excited about going to church rather than just having to tick it off a checklist. And then you can think about the question of, if we knew every single answer within the Bible, would we still want to come here? And that's very unlikely for it to happen, for one single person to know all the answers, but just in the hypothetical, to really know where your mind is at for why you're here. If you knew everything, would you still come to church? Would you come here to learn, to teach, to fellowship? Or because you know it all, there's no reason to? All of us here, we had to brave the elements. For those of you that are at home online, you're smart. It's cold outside and very snowy, but there's a reason that you tuned in. You definitely have the option, especially nowadays on YouTube, to click on something else. But you chose to tune in. You made that conscious decision. Just like everyone here made the decision to battle through the elements to come to church. So why are you here today? And why should we be here next week? And the week after that? Which is a little ironic. I will not be here next week. I'll be in California, but still kind of the same type of mindset of, why are we here today? Why should we be here next week? And why should we continue to come back whenever we have the opportunity to? Again, I may not have all the answers, but I want each one of you this week just to think about your own mindset into why you're doing the things that you're doing. It leads back to that motive from earlier. As why are we doing what we do? Why should we do what we do? Are we doing it for ourselves, or are we doing it to please God and for God's plan? We don't want to be so focused on the end journey, hopefully getting into the kingdom of God, that being the pinnacle destination that we want to reach at. Be so focused on that, just checking off boxes to get to that destination, that we ignore the journey itself. The struggles to get there, the learning that it takes to get there, the teaching, being able to help someone else also on their journey, instead of focusing just on that end goal, but the whole process. We think about, when we're starting to get close to the emblems, we think about Jesus also having this mindset. I want to turn quickly to Luke 22, verses 41 and 42. And this is when Jesus is praying on the mountain, at the Mount of Olives. We think about Jesus knowing that he was going to have to die. And this is him in those final moments before being put on trial and on the cross. But this is Jesus talking about his options and asking that question, why? Why does it have to happen? So Luke 22, verses 41 and 42. And this is talking about Jesus. He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Jesus did not want to die. That's what it says. Take this cup from me. Take this burden from him. However, yet, despite his own interest, he's not sacrificing himself for him. He's sacrificing it for God, for all of us. He says, "Yet not my will," my being Jesus' will, but yours, being God's, be done. Such a powerful message. Even on the points of death, Jesus is still following God. And when we're thinking about these emblems, again, we want to ask that question, why? And we want to continue to ask questions. Why are we doing the things that we do? And why should we continue to question? We want to continue to learn, to continue to gain knowledge, to build up our faith for both ourselves and for those around us. All begins with that question of why. So I want to close out with reading back from the beginning verses that Mark had read from us in Proverbs 1, talking about knowledge and why it's so important, why we want to ask these questions again. Proverbs, considered the book of wisdom. But from Proverbs 1, start at verse 2 this time, verse 7. For gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. We want to continue to do what we do for God.